"You're too old, Dr. Marzano." That's what she said in front of HR in a room I had once designed myself. A room meant for collaboration, not execution. They didn't even flinch when I handed in my badge. No handshake, no ceremony. Just a thin smile from Elaine Voss, the CEO I had once mentored in her fellowship years. I had given that hospital 27 years, helped design its diagnostic systems, saved lives, some of them more than once. And when artificial intelligence entered the field, I didn't resist it. I built it. Sentinel DX, the original backbone of what they now call clairvoyant TM. It was mine. The architecture, the logic, the layers of probability and pattern recognition, they came from my hands. And hers, they came later. After it worked. After we got FDA provisional validation. After the world started watching. But when I turned 61, Elaine Voss decided the optics no longer fit. Too old, too slow, too analog. She smiled as security walked me out. She thought I was finished. But here's the thing about people like me. We don't raise our voices. We just wait for the silence to get loud enough to answer back. My name is Dr. Vincent J. Marzano. I was once the chief of diagnostic imaging at Beacon Hill Medical. Today I'm the man who owns the system they're still running, and they have no idea that every second it operates. It does so under my patent. Let me tell you how we got here. It started like most betrayals do, quietly. I'd been noticing it for a while. Meetings without invitations, projects restructured, my name slowly being omitted from things I'd built from scratch. One morning, I walked past a boardroom and saw my assistant presenting a slide deck I had written. Elaine was at the head of the table, nodding. No mention, no credit. Just a firm pivot to newer voices, younger faces. I didn't say anything. Not then. I still believed that truth had a way of surfacing on its own. That was my mistake. The day they let me go, they framed it as a strategic transition. Elaine delivered the line with her usual grace. "We believe your talents have outgrown the institution, Vincent." She didn't mean it as a compliment. I walked out with two things. A brown cardboard box and a quiet secret. They were still using my code. I had kept copies, of course. Diagrams, early white papers, internal emails, patent documents. They were safe, time-stamped, signed by legal. They forgot, or maybe never knew, that when we first prototyped Sentinel DX back in 2016, Lena and I filed a provisional patent naming me as primary inventor. And though she passed away in 2019, I maintained it, renewed it, protected it. Elaine Voss had assumed the algorithm was absorbed into the hospital's IP. She assumed wrong. That night, I sat in my kitchen, Matteo across the table from me. My son. He was the only one who didn't say, "I'm sorry." Instead, he asked, "What are you going to do?" I looked at him. Same sharp eyes his mother used to have. Nothing I said, not yet, because revenge is loud, but power is quiet until it doesn't have to be. The next morning, I brewed my coffee, opened my laptop, and pulled up the Sentinel DX source tree. Still intact, still mine. At the bottom of the page, Lena's name still sat beside mine. 2 engineers, 1 idea. An AI that didn't just analyze scans but learned from the decisions humans were too afraid to make. They fired me for being old. But the system they kept was born when they were still in med school. And the only reason it still works is because I never gave them the part they didn't understand. They took my title, but they forgot something more important. I kept the pen, and now I was ready to write myself back into the story. Elaine Voss watched me like she was watching a fire she had started herself. And she smiled. Security didn't grab me. They didn't need to. I walked out on my own box in hand coat folded over my arm, shoulders square. But as I passed the front desk, I caught my reflection in the glass. And I realized something. I didn't look broken. I looked free. The hospital lobby was colder than usual. Or maybe I was just noticing it for the first time. I stepped into the street. It was raining lightly. Boston in late October. Gray skies, gray thoughts. I flagged a cab, gave my address. The driver didn't speak. I was grateful for that. At home, Matteo had already made tea. He was always better at timing storms than I was. I dropped the box on the kitchen table, peeled off my wet coat. He didn't ask what happened, didn't need to. He saw the look in my eyes and slid the mug across the table. "They'll regret this," he said quietly. I didn't reply. Not because I disagreed, but because it wasn't time for that kind of talk. Not yet. I unpacked slowly. Medical journals, plaques. A signed photo of Lena and me from the first AI symposium we ever spoke at San Diego 2017. She was wearing a coral scarf. I'd forgotten about that. There were other things too. A pen, a hard drive, 3 letters I'd never sent, and in the bottom of the box a folded sheet of printer paper. The last system log from Sentinel DX, time-stamped. Final algorithm stayed active, which meant they hadn't rewritten it. They were still using my code, and that told me everything I needed to know. Matteo sat across from me, now laptop open. He wasn't just a curious kid anymore. He was 27, systems engineer, brilliant and patient in a way I never fully was at that age. He pulled up the Clairvoyant website, the new AI they were promoting. Bold font, sleek lines, buzzwords on top of buzzwords. But under the hood, I recognized every beat of its heart. Same node structure, same probabilistic mapping, same weighted output filters Lena and I had developed to prevent false negatives in lung scans. Only now it had a new face, and none of the soul. "You know they're still using the architecture," Matteo said. I nodded. "It's mine." "No, it's yours and Lena's." He was right. It always had been. But now it was also theirs. They just didn't know the difference between owning something and stealing it quietly. Elaine Voss thought she was clever. She stripped my title, cut my access, wrote me out of the history they'd rewritten for their shareholders. But she forgot one thing. The law didn't care about titles. It cared about documents. And mine were airtight. Back in 2016, before Beacon Hill even considered commercialization, Lena and I had filed provisional protection through an independent patent office in New Hampshire. We'd been cautious, naive maybe, but cautious. We knew what it could become. And when Lena passed away pancreatic cancer 2019, I renewed the claim in both our names. Every year, without fail. Because I wasn't just protecting a product. I was protecting her memory. That night, I opened the server logs one more time. Matteo hovered beside me. We didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he asked, "What are you going to do?" Same question as the day before. But this time my answer had changed. I turned to him. "I'm going to wait." He frowned. "For what?" I looked him in the eye. "For them to slip. Because systems like that, they always do. The second you commercialize integrity, you introduce the slow rot." Elaine Voss didn't fire me because I was old. She fired me because I reminded her that her throne was borrowed. And I left not in defeat but in silence. And silence, when held long enough, starts to sound like thunder. They didn't announce the changes. There was no press release, no technical brief, no version history log that anyone outside the boardroom could see. They just updated the AI, quietly. It was Matteo who spotted it first. He had been running comparative tests on archived datasets trying to replicate Clairvoyant's output against the original Sentinel DX baseline. We were sitting in my study, evening, soft jazz in the background, coffee growing cold. He leaned back, expression stiff. "Dad, something's wrong." He showed me the scans, one from 6 months ago, one from last week. Same patient, same dataset. But the new system didn't flag the tumor. The old version had. They moved the confidence threshold, Matteo muttered. From 0.76 to 0.91. That's insane. What that meant was simple. More patients would pass through unchecked. More tumors missed. More lives gambled. All because Elaine Voss wanted the system to seem smarter. Fewer false positives, she'd say. Cleaner data, happier doctors, less follow-up, lower costs. But the body doesn't care about cost efficiency. It just dies when no one is watching close enough. I sat with that for a long time. Longer than I should have. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. Too quickly. Too clearly. And because deep down I knew exactly what would happen next. 3 weeks later it did. His name was Elias Monroe. 42 years old, non-smoker, father of two. His routine scan showed something small behind his sternum. The tech flagged it. The nurse flagged it. But the clairvoyant system cleared it. The doctor knew overworked trusted the machine. Elaine's machine. Elias went home. 2 months later he was dead. It wasn't reported. Not officially. Just a line in a monthly incident review. Delayed diagnosis. Advanced thymic carcinoma. Prognosis poor. I stared at the PDF for an hour. Didn't blink. Because I remembered that scan. Mateo had shown it to me during the test run. Sentinel DX had caught it. Clairvoyant hadn't. That night I walked through the city for hours. Boston had always been cold, but this night, this one felt personal. Like the bricks themselves were watching, asking why the man who built the fire was now standing outside, letting the house burn. I thought of Lena. Her voice in my ear years ago. If you ever see the machine choosing profit over life, shut it down. Even if it costs you everything. I had already lost my title. What more could they take? So I started building a file. Patient names, scan timestamps, threshold logs. All public data, but organized in a way only someone from the inside would know how to see. And once I had enough, I would send it somewhere it couldn't be buried. Elaine Voss didn't know it yet, but she had just crossed a line. Not the kind that breaks rules. The kind that breaks people. I didn't move quickly, didn't shout. I just began collecting silence. Patient by patient, case by case. And when I was done, the sound it made would be impossible to ignore. Mateo sat across from me again. Are you really going to expose them? I nodded. Not yet. But I'm going to make sure the truth has nowhere else to hide. Because they changed the thresholds. They changed the rules. They changed the face. But they forgot the most dangerous thing in the room. Was the man who remembered how it was built. I still remember the subject line. Urgent threshold variance risk assessment action required. Sent at 8:42 a.m. Directly to Elaine Voss, CC'd to legal compliance, and 2 of the AI oversight engineers. 12 attachments. Data visualizations. A full report with 5 flagged cases, including Elias Monroe. And a single sentence bolded in red. Your current threshold settings may lead to preventable loss of life. I didn't hear back that day, or the next. Or the next. No reply. No acknowledgement. Nothing. I waited a week. Then I called. The secretary paused. Ms. Voss is in meetings. I asked her to leave a message. She didn't ask for my number. She didn't need to. They all knew exactly who I was, and what they were trying to pretend I wasn't anymore. 3 days later I got a response. But not from Elaine. From a lawyer. Short. Precise. We acknowledge receipt of your email. The information you've provided appears to be based on outdated software iterations. Please refrain from further contact regarding internal system design. As you are no longer affiliated with Beacon Hill Medical, any further inquiries will be considered interference. No signature, just legal affairs BHM. They buried my warning, filed it under malicious interference, like it was spam, or worse, a threat. I read it twice. Then once more, just to make sure I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't. They knew. They read it, and they still chose silence. Mateo stood behind me. He'd read the thread. He didn't say a word. He just walked over, picked up the printed response, and pinned it to the corkboard above my desk, right beside my Sentinel DX patent certificate. That's when I stopped trying to warn them, and started preparing to expose them. You can't fight power with noise, not when the machine is built to muffle it. You fight it with patience, with patterns, with pressure. You wait until their silence becomes statistically impossible to defend. I began compiling again, but this time not just flagged patients. I went after audit trails, version change logs, whistleblower complaints, forum chatter, anonymous Glassdoor reviews. A Reddit thread where someone named Cortex AUX claimed their team was told to tune down alerts to hit quarterly PR targets. And at the center of it all, Elaine Voss. She didn't just bury my warning. She orchestrated the rewrite. She turned Sentinel DX from a system that asked hard questions into one that answered too easily. And people were dying for it. I met with a contact at the FDA. Off the record, coffee shop in Cambridge. He was mid-40s, sharp, wore a Red Sox cap and sunglasses like that made him invisible. I showed him 3 patient cases all cleared by clairvoyant, all within the same 45-day window, all later re-diagnosed with stage 3 malignancies. He said 7 words: "If this is real, it's criminal." It was real, and I had just begun. Back at home, Matteo had lit a candle. A strange habit of his, he said it helped him focus. I watched the flame flicker against the wall, casting long, trembling shadows. "You think she knows you're building a case?" he asked. I shook my head. "Elaine Voss thinks she's already won." He nodded. "Then maybe it's time we change the ending." I leaned back in my chair. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not out of satisfaction, but clarity. They ignored my warning. They buried my email. But they forgot something important. You don't silence the man who built the system. You only delay the moment he turns it back against you. It came by courier. No signature, no knock. Just an envelope, white, thick, deliberate, wedged into my mailbox like a blade. Matteo was the one who found it. He slid it across the kitchen table without saying a word. His eyes didn't blink. He didn't need to ask what it was. He already knew. I opened it slowly. The letterhead read, Beacon Hill Medical Legal Affairs Division. 6 paragraphs, 3 citations, 1 accusation. You are hereby instructed to cease and desist from disseminating or disclosing any materials, proprietary systems, or internal communications related to the clairvoyant diagnostic framework. Further contact or interference will result in civil litigation. They called it proprietary. The system I designed, the code I wrote, the architecture Lena and I stayed up 4 nights in a row perfecting, now weaponized into a letter designed to scare me silent. But I didn't feel fear. I felt calm, calmer than I had in weeks. Because when someone sends you a threat like that, it means they're sweating. Elaine Voss was sweating. I walked to the study, opened the bottom drawer, pulled out the framed copy of my patent. Simple, elegant, filed under adaptive diagnostic inference layering for preemptive oncology detection. Filed by me. Signed, dated 2016, 4 years before clairvoyant was ever named. I took down a photo, replaced it with the letter, pinned it right beside the patent. 2 pieces of paper. 1 proof I built it, 1 proof they were scared I still could. Matteo looked at the wall, then back at me. What now? I smiled faintly. Now I teach them something. That night I wrote a tweet. Simple. No hashtags, no drama. Just a photo, the legal threat, and the patent. Side by side. Captioned, when someone tries to take what's yours, remind them what it looked like before they showed up. It took 3 hours, then it exploded. Thousands of retweets. Comments from physicians, software devs, patients, nurses. Some angry, some stunned, some just tagging AFDA, a US Patent Office, a Beacon Hill PR. The silence Elaine Voss had built so carefully cracked. I didn't hear from her. Of course not. She was never the one to speak directly. But the next morning an op-ed appeared in a mid-tier medical journal. Anonymous source, clearly planted. It read, Retired Staff Engineer Fabricates Role in Diagnostic System Origin Story. Hospital Disputes Ownership. No names, no facts, just whispers. But I'd been in the game too long to miss the pattern. They were going to spin, gaslight, minimize, so I raised the stakes. I sent a packet sealed physical to 3 places. The FDA's AI Oversight Division, the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. A journalist I trusted from the old days at MedTech Pulse. Inside, patient misdiagnosis patterns, threshold change logs, the original Sentinel DX flowchart, the provisional patent timeline. No commentary, just data. I didn't need to tell them what to think. The numbers did that on their own. Matteo watched me as I sealed the envelopes. You're not angry, he said. I shook my head. I'm not here to win an argument. I'm here to let the truth do what it always does when you stop trying to control it. And the truth, it doesn't yell. It doesn't threaten. It just waits. Until someone finally listens. The day after the packets were delivered, Elaine Voss went dark. No public appearances, no posts, no interviews. Beacon Hill issued a vague statement about collaborative ownership of diagnostic tools. And in private, I knew what was coming, because legal threats are just smokescreens when you know where the fire actually is. And now, the whole city was beginning to smell smoke. They showed up on a Thursday. 2 agents. Business casual, clipboard energy, polite smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Dr. Marzano. I nodded, stepped aside, gestured to the dining table where Matteo had already cleared away our notebooks. They didn't sit right away. They looked around first at the shelves of old textbooks, the framed diagrams on the wall, the flickering candle. Matteo's touch. One of them badge reading S. Cruz pulled out a folder. Thick. Worn at the corners. Inside was everything I'd sent them and more. Clairvoyant system audits. Patient case studies. Threshold logs. And a set of internal emails from Beacon Hill that I hadn't included. Someone had leaked more than I expected. Cruz tapped the folder. We have reason to believe the current deployment of Clairvoyant may constitute medical negligence based on system design choices made without proper oversight. I didn't answer. Not yet. He continued. Our investigation began independently, but your submission reframed it. He slid a page across the table. My name, top line, primary architect, Sentinel DX prototype layer 2016. It was from a Beacon Hill internal filing, marked confidential, signed by Elaine Voss. So they had said my name. In meetings, in legal memos, behind closed doors. They just hadn't said it out loud. Until now. I looked up. You already knew it was mine, I said. Cruz nodded once. We did, but we needed them to admit it first. Matteo sat quietly in the corner typing. He wasn't part of this meeting, not officially. But I wanted him to hear it. Not because I needed backup, but because I needed witness. They asked their questions. I gave precise answers. Technical, clean, cold. Every now and then they'd glance at each other like what I said confirmed something they hadn't wanted to believe. After an hour, Cruz closed the folder. There'll be a formal inquiry, he said. We'll be issuing a notice to Beacon Hill regarding algorithmic transparency violations and failure to disclose architectural origins. I raised an eyebrow. Is that the legal way of saying they tried to erase me? He didn't smile, but he didn't deny it either. They left as quietly as they came. No fanfare, no press, no apology. But I wasn't expecting one, because when institutions break, they don't shatter all at once. They splinter, quietly, internally, until the cracks can no longer be ignored. That night, Matteo sat on the floor beside my desk. Laptop open, fingers moving. There's chatter, he said. Forums, internal Slack leaks. Someone's feeding reporters now. I didn't ask who. Didn't care. Truth had legs now. It was moving on its own. An article dropped the next morning. MedTech Pulse. Whistleblower evidence suggests AI system may have led to fatal misdiagnoses. Original inventor was forced out. My name wasn't just in the article. It was the headline. Beacon Hill issued a press release within hours. Corporate language, carefully vetted. We take these allegations seriously. While Dr. Marzano was indeed involved in early-stage development, the current iteration of Clairvoyant represents a significantly evolved platform built by a dedicated team. And yet, they had to say it, had to type it. Dr. Marzano was involved. That one sentence cost them more than they understood. Elaine Voss, still silent. Not a word. No statement, no denial, no acknowledgement. But silence isn't strength. Not anymore. Matteo printed the article, taped it to the wall, right below the legal threat, right beside the patent. A timeline was forming. And the ending? It was starting to write itself. It started as a whisper, then a tweet, then an op-ed. Then it became a statement carefully worded, crafted by attorneys and PR teams. Clairvoyant was built by a brilliant collective of minds, each contributing unique insights. While legacy systems informed early development, today's platform is proprietary, original, and future-facing. I'd heard the tone before. It's what people use when they're trying to praise you while also pretending you were never there. They tried to rewrite the story. They tried to move the origin point, erase the roots, replace the architects, make themselves the center of the blueprint. But they forgot something crucial. I still had the first draft. I opened my backup drive. Buried under 7 layers of encryption was the original Sentinel DX proposal, PDF time-stamped watermarked with embedded algorithm visualizations and annotated notes from Lena. It wasn't code. It was history. And history, when written honestly, doesn't decay. I uploaded it to a private page. No commentary, no headline, just the document. I included 1 sentence above the download link. Before the story was edited, this was page 1. Then I posted it. Just once. No tags, no dramatics. Matteo refreshed the page. And again. By noon it had 50,000 hits. By nightfall 300,000. Comments poured in. Former hospital staff, ex-interns, old tech contractors. They started chiming in with pieces of the timeline, validating meetings, confirming names, linking systems. Someone even posted a photo of a whiteboard from Beacon Hill's R&D lab dated 2017. In the corner, Marzano logic failsafe, do not bypass. They tried to bury the truth. But when it's printed in 1,000 hands and carried by 1,000 voices, you can't unwrite it. Elaine Voss still hadn't spoken, but a memo leaked from Beacon Hill's comms team. Internal use only. Maintain ambiguity. Do not directly acknowledge patent claims. Reframe Dr. Marzano's role as academic precursor, not system designer. Do not engage with press outside pre-approved statements. They were hemorrhaging control. And their solution? Rebranding the wound. I printed the memo, taped it to the board. Now there were 4 papers. The patent, the legal threat, the article, the cover-up strategy. Matteo called it the wall. I called it the skeleton they thought no one would find in their closet. The next day I got an email. Private address, untraceable sender. Subject line, I was there. Attached was a recording, a meeting. Beacon Hill boardroom, Elaine's voice. Crystal clear. No, we don't need to involve Marzano. He gave us what we needed. The name is ours now. She wasn't just silent. She was complicit. She knew exactly what they'd taken and who they took it from. Matteo listened to it 3 times, then asked, "Are you going to leak it?" I shook my head. "Not yet." He frowned. "Why not?" I looked at him, really looked. Because truth isn't just about being right. It's about knowing when to let them hang themselves with their own rope. Because I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to fight. I just needed to let them keep lying in public while the foundation beneath them turned to ash. They tried to rewrite the story, but I still had the first draft, signed, dated, witnessed. And now, so did the world. She didn't knock. She just stood in my doorway, rein in her hair hands, trembling around a folded piece of paper. I hadn't seen her in years. Irene Caldera, triage nurse, 15 years at Beacon Hill. And now, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Can I come in?" Her voice cracked halfway through. I stepped aside without a word, led her to the kitchen. She didn't sit, didn't speak. Just pulled something from her coat pocket and placed it on the table. A chart, patient intake log, handwritten initials. Her own. "I flagged that patient," she whispered. "The system cleared them. I told the attending. He said it was above his override threshold. He told me not to make noise." She looked up, eyes red. She died, 22, stage 4 by the time they found it again. I didn't speak, because anything I said would sound like permission. And she didn't need that. She needed release. Irene sat, hands shaking, then sobbing. Quiet at first, then not. I made tea, gave her a blanket, let her unravel slowly like a woman trying to unburn her conscience. When she finally spoke again, she wasn't crying. Her voice was steel, wrapped in regret. "They told us not to question the AI, that human override was too costly, that flagged scans were being over-reviewed." She paused. "They called it performance waste." Matteo had come downstairs by then. He stood in the doorway, silent, listening. "Learning," Irene continued. "It wasn't just one case. It was dozens, maybe more. Anyone who tried to push back got reassigned, or quietly offered early retirement. She looked me dead in the eye. Vincent, they used your name to sell it, but they cut your ethics out of the engine. That hit hard, not because it was shocking, but because it was finally spoken out loud by someone inside. She reached into her bag, pulled out a flash drive. This has every internal memo I saved. Shift logs, overrides, suppressed incident reports. Then she said something I'll never forget. I don't care what they do to me. I just don't want to be quiet anymore. Silence. Then Matteo broke it. You don't have to. I took the drive, held it like it weighed more than it should. Because it did. By morning, the files were verified. Real, untouched. Each one a nail in the coffin Elaine Voss had built from polished statements and non-disclosure agreements. We didn't leak them. We didn't have to. Irene did. 3 days later, she uploaded the full drive to a whistleblower archive for medical professionals. Then she posted under her real name. Just one sentence. I was told not to speak, but she died, and I'm done being quiet. The internet caught fire. Medical blogs, Reddit threads, podcasts, health watchdog sites. Even the New York Times picked it up. AI whistleblower claims diagnostic tool caused preventable deaths, former nurse speaks out. They reached out for comment. Beacon Hill declined. Elaine Voss remained unavailable. But silence, now it was evidence. Irene came back a week later, not to apologize, not to cry, but to say thank you. You built something good, she said. They turned it into a weapon, but you gave us a way to fight back. I looked at her. This woman. A nurse, a mother, a name they thought they could erase. But when the truth finally arrived, it came wearing scrubs. Matteo stood beside me at the door as she left. He didn't smile, just said, "One spark." I nodded. That's all it ever takes. The call came at 8:03 a.m., Beacon Hill Medical direct line. I didn't pick up. The voicemail was brief. Dr. Marzano, this is HR. We'd like to arrange a meeting regarding potential re-engagement. There's interest at the board level in revisiting your role within the clairvoyant system. No apology, no explanation, just a red carpet rolled over ash. I didn't call back. They called again, then emailed. Subject line, a path forward. Matteo read it first, then looked at me. You're not going back. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Not in the way they think. The meeting was set. Private, neutral space. Beacon Hill's off-site boardroom in Back Bay. 2 legal reps, 1 board chair, and her. Elaine Voss. In person. She stood when I entered. Still poised, still polished, still dangerous. Vincent. Just my name. No handshake, no warmth. Only that surgical calm she used in every crisis she thought she could manage. I sat. Matteo stayed by the door, silent. Elaine opened her binder. We've had a challenging quarter. Some reputational misalignment. The board feels your technical experience could be instrumental in restoring internal confidence. I let the silence stretch. Let it breathe. Then I spoke. You want me to fix the thing you broke using the ethics you buried. She didn't flinch. We're willing to offer full architectural authority. Compensation can be discussed. I looked at the others in the room. One coughed. Another avoided my eyes. Then I pulled something from my briefcase. A mirror. Small. Framed in black steel. Simple. I placed it on the table. Turned it toward her. She raised an eyebrow. What is this? Perspective. I said, you don't need me. You need this. She frowned. Vincent, you're not inviting me back. You're trying to buy silence before the next leak hits. I stood. Matteo did too. You don't get to rebuild the system with the same hands that gutted it. Elaine's tone dropped. Cool. Even. You're making a mistake. I paused. Looked right at her. No. I made the mistake years ago when I believed silence was safe. When I thought people like you would eventually do the right thing. I leaned forward. But now I know. You only do what's right when the cost of being wrong becomes public. I turned to the mirror. Tapped the glass once. Fix this, not me. Matteo held the door. We left without another word. Outside, the air felt clearer. Boston in early spring, still gray but trying. You think she got it? Mateo asked. I smiled faintly. She saw herself. That's more dangerous than anything I could have said. Later that night, the voicemail lit up again. I didn't listen. Some stories don't need sequels, because they offered me the job back. But what I gave them was the version of me they hoped would stay buried. And this time, he was holding a mirror. It started with a tweet, not from me, not from Irene, not from any of us, but from a junior technician at Beacon Hill. Handle A-code Raven83. Clairvoyant just went dark mid-scan. Admins in full panic. They're saying rollback failed. Docs yelling. Patients waiting. One post, then two, then dozens. By 11 a.m. it was trending. System offline. AI shutdown. Clairvoyant crash. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just sat at my desk and watched the storm unfold. Because I knew what they were doing. Beacon Hill wasn't investigating. They were unplugging. Quietly, desperately, trying to pull the plug on their mistake before the rest of the world saw how brittle it had become. A press release landed that afternoon. Due to system irregularities and ongoing external audits, Beacon Hill Medical has temporarily suspended the use of its AI diagnostic platform Clairvoyant. Patient care remains our highest priority. No mention of me. No mention of Irene. No mention of the truth. Just irregularities. Just vapor. Mateo stepped into the room. He didn't need to ask. He'd seen the headlines. They're finally pulling it. I nodded. They had no choice. He stood by the window looking out at the Boston skyline. Then he said something I'll never forget. It's gone, but what replaces it will define everything. That stopped me, because he was right. They shut it down. But what rises next? That's where the story shifts from revenge to responsibility. I opened a folder on my desktop. It was labeled Sentinel-2, a newer version. Cleaner. Simpler. Built not to replace doctors, but to force them to pause. Not a decision engine. A reflection engine. Something Lena and I used to dream about, but never had time to finish. Mateo sat across from me. He scanned the architecture diagrams. Nodded slowly. You've been rebuilding it. Since they started rewriting the story, I said. I knew eventually they'd kill the machine, so I started designing the version that wouldn't need them. He looked up. You want to release it? No, I paused. I want to teach it. We started working, side by side, night after night. No investors, no PR team, no board. Just code, ethics, time. The headlines faded. Elaine Voss disappeared from the news cycle. Some said she took a sabbatical. Others said she was strategizing quietly. I didn't care. Because while she strategized, we were building something that couldn't be sold. Couldn't be trademarked by people who didn't understand its soul. 3 weeks later, I gave a lecture at MIT. Unannounced. Small room, mostly students. I walked in with a single slide. It said, "Medicine doesn't need faster machines. It needs slower questions." The room was silent. Then it erupted. Not applause, not cheers. Just hunger. For something that asked them to think again. That's when I knew. Beacon Hill had shut it off. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because this wasn't about winning. This wasn't about noise. This was about rewriting what they tried to erase. With something better, something human, something ours. The article came out on a Sunday. Front page Boston Herald. Banner headline. Beacon Hill's 240 AI experiment ends in silence. Subhead. Insiders call the Clairvoyant project a failed leap forward. Critics say it set the field back years. I stared at the screen. Not angry, not bitter, just still. Because what they called failure, I called a clearing. Mateo walked in holding coffee. They're trying to bury it. I shook my head. They're trying to forget it. He sat beside me. They'll never understand what it could have been. I closed the browser, looked at the wall. The 4 documents still hung there. The patent, the legal threat, Irene's article, the boardroom memo. But I added a 5th, a printed message sent from a young oncologist in Missouri. Just one line. Your system caught something mine didn't. I checked because I remembered what you taught. That was the win. Not applause, not redemption, but resonance. The kind that lives quietly in someone else's work. Sentinel-2 wasn't on the market. It wasn't in hospitals. Not yet. But it was in classrooms. Matteo had started a nonprofit Clarity Works. Open-source diagnostic tools, designed for teaching, not selling. No monetization, no shareholders, just purpose. They called it a failure because they couldn't package it, couldn't present it to a boardroom and say, "See, it makes money now." But Matteo said it best. Real medicine isn't about invention. It's about remembrance, of people, of nuance, of pain. At night I watched lectures online. Young doctors citing sentinel logic trees. Not knowing my name. Not needing to. That was freedom. That was peace. One morning Matteo came downstairs, laptop in hand. He looked different. Focused. Still. Older than he was yesterday. We got an email from Columbia. They want to adapt our framework into their residency curriculum. I smiled. Didn't say a word. Just nodded once slow. Because that's how legacy works. It doesn't ask permission. It just keeps teaching. Beacon Hill never reopened the AI wing. Elaine Voss never returned to public view. Some say she retired. Some say she consults in Europe now. I don't know. I don't care. Because I stopped looking back the moment students started looking forward. Matteo stood by the window that evening. Same one where we once watched the city burn with stories they tried to control. Now it was quiet, unassuming, and he said something I'll never forget. They called it failure. But they never understood we weren't building a product. We were building a compass. I watched him go back to his desk. Then I whispered to myself, and now he carries it. I don't work in hospitals anymore. I don't wear the white coat. I don't carry the badge that says Chief Systems Architect. Those titles, gone. I lost them. Stripped, rewritten, dissolved somewhere between a legal memo and a silent nod in a boardroom I was never invited back to. But I wake up every morning with something they couldn't take. My name. And it means more now than it ever did when it was on the door. When you survive erasure, you learn what can't be deleted. Not by press releases, not by silence, not even by wealth. Because the moment someone remembers what you built when no one was watching, that's the moment your name stops being a label and becomes a signal. Matteo once asked me, "Do you miss it?" He meant the job, the title, the recognition. I said, "No," because I was never building a resume. I was building a mirror, and they smashed it. So we built another. Now I get letters, not from executives, from interns, from nurses, from students, handwritten notes. I used your model to question a scan. It saved a man's life. I read your old lecture on system doubt. It made me stay in medicine. I didn't know your name, but I know now, and I'm listening. I read everyone. Then I pinned them to the wall, right beside the patent, the threat, the leak, the press, the classroom offer, and now, these letters. You want to know the truth, the real ending. Here it is. I didn't win. Not in the way people define winning. I didn't get revenge, I didn't sue, I didn't demand my chair back. I walked away, with nothing, except the one thing they underestimated. My memory, and my ability to make others remember too. Because systems fail, awards fade, companies collapse. But a name tied to truth, tied to lives, tied to something bigger than ambition. That name echoes. Matteo teaches now. So do I in smaller ways. Guest lectures, quiet mentorships, one-on-one calls with people brave enough to say, "I think something's wrong. Can you help me see it?" And I do, every time. Because when you've seen what I've seen, when you've lost what I've lost, the most sacred thing you can give anyone is clarity. I lost the job, the title, the glory, but I kept my name. And in the end, that was the only thing worth protecting. Not every story ends with applause. Some end with a whisper passed down person to person until the next truth is no longer afraid to speak.